Ser hon stanna solufegra Gudli thagdan augum lei Þar skuludig var drottir byggja Ljóts byrja allar helgar kindir Meiri og minni mögu heimdalar Vilt vad jag val föder vel fyrtälja Fornspjögl fyra þá fremst man Hár var alla það rýmir byggði Vara sannur nje sær nje svala Solter sortna sig for
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Geekwatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers, with a couple of them who are going to be playing the Doku Challenge and showing up later on in the show. We have the biggest head in Chicago, the man who is bringing back the Mac, and the man who is eternally salty at the Blackhawks. Good brother Aaron.
Of course, I'm the foreman of the salt mine.
Yep.
Of course, I'm gonna be salty, especially when it comes to Stan Bowman. Fuck him, fire him.
All right.
We have the king of memes, the man currently laughing at Dan Quinn, and the man with more spins than Sonic Spinball. Good brother Akira.
Hold up. Since you mentioned Dan Quinn, hit it, spin! Get your ass out of here, freaking bastard!
It's after midnight and my show's a nightlight and I'm canceled. The movies are cheap and put viewers to sleep, so I'm canceled.
Can't even make it through the goddamn intro. Jesus, man.
Keep your pants on.
Get your choking ass out of here, Quinn.
Yep. And we have the man with the shades, the man with the sunglasses, and the man whose state has the only championship in sports that matters in 2020. Good brother Shades.
Congratulations, man. I know you're in Orlando, but fuck, close enough. Congratulations.
I'm not in Orlando. I'm below Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought you were. God, I must.
No.
Hey guys, God damn! I haven't hit 40. I haven't hit 40 yet, and I'm already getting Alzheimer's.
Oh.
But yeah, congratulations anyway, man. You finally earned it.
And of course, last but certainly not least, we have the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, bringing you up to 10,000%. Good brother Xanatrix Zadare.
Hey. Just remember, we're still looking for beta testers for the new 1,000,000%. I could use them.
I don't know. I think you've lost after getting up to a 10,000%. I think you've lost a few limbs.
Number ceilings are made to be broken.
Yes.
Okay. I hope you got a good lawyer.
Better lawyers than any woman complaining about the glass ceiling. Ho!
Oh!
Ouch!
Oh boy!
Felt that.
Now
Moving
then,
on.
as you can see, this time for this particular thing, I figured we haven't. It's been a while since we've tackled a video game related matter. So in light of that, I figured we should do a whole episode dedicated to shooters. But it would now, obviously, a lot of us grew up in this. A lot of us have some time in the 7th generation, and we had to deal with the unfortunate dude bro stereotype, which soured the reputation of the shooter. Which we will get to that, trust me. But I wanted to tackle the totality of the shooter in terms of its rising and falling actions over the past 30 years.
Yeah.
And hence the title of this week's topic: the rise, fall, and renaissance of the shooter. And obviously, because of the fact that we have to start with the humble beginnings, we got to open up with id.
Oh yeah, patient fucking
Geniuses.
zero.
Now, I will now. Of course, even before that, it already had a decent name for themselves. I mean, Commander Keen was a thing, and true story.
By the way, they were known as at the time Apogee.
I could have swore Apogee was a completely separate company.
Oh wait a minute. Oh yeah, that's right.
Apogee was the company
3D
that would later become 3D Realms. So.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Get your wires crossed there, Aaron.
Again, yet again, Aaron. That's the second time tonight.
God damn.
And yeah,
Apogee's still around to this day too.
When it comes to id, I will freely admit that while I did play Wolfenstein 3D, which was kind of the patient zero for a lot of this.
Oh yes, I love Wolfenstein 3D. Man.
I didn't play it as much as what came later. Like I played it a bit. I'm still not sure if the Super Noah's Ark 3D rumor was ever actually confirmed, though.
Oh, there's a classic move.
Oh
yeah.
I'd like to think they did that just to piss off Nintendo.
Now,
Or
for
more
those of you who don't know that story, this is one of those long-standing urban legends in gaming. The story goes that id did not like how Nintendo edited the SNES port of Wolfenstein, so they gave the source code to Wisdom Tree, a game that made shitty Bible games, to make a joke of it.
Oh, may I talk about Wolfenstein 3D on the SNES? Because I owned that. I owned that back in the day.
Oh, you poor bastard.
Well, I thought it was okay for a Super NES title. I didn't have access to a PC, so it had to do. But let's just put it this way. They got rid of a lot of swastikas, and guess what they changed the dogs into?
What?
Rats!
Oh,
Big
God.
ass rats!
So we got RUSs. Rats of a new rodents of a new size? I don't believe they exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed them into fucking RUSs.
Yeah. When now, of course, nobody from id has outright stated if this is the case,
Confirmed
and
or not, yeah.
it's one of those things where I'm not going to say it is or isn't. I'm just going to say that if it is the case, I could buy it.
Yeah.
If that's you know what? Fuck it. If that's the case, then you know what? Fucking cheers. Hold on, let me see.
And here's the first challenger of the Doku Challenge, Maddie. How's it going, Maddie?
Yo, Maddie.
You know what? If that rumor,
Oh boy.
what's up, man? Yeah, and you're just in time because if that rumor was true that they sold it to Wisdom Tree, just to piss off Nintendo, you know what?
Oh, a little bit of the bubbly.
Wait, what did I miss?
We're talking about the rumor that id gave the source code of Wolfenstein 3D to Wisdom Tree, a Bible group that made video games, to make Super Noah's Ark 3D.
Or Super 3D Noah's Ark.
Or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it is so much like Wolfenstein, like it is really it is a really one-to-one comparison.
It's just
It would
Wolfenstein
not
with a
shock
new
me at
protocol.
all.
Yeah. But now I do want to something else I'll touch on later is that Wolfenstein almost got a sequel that was going to be developed by Apogee. But in the interim, the Apogee lost the rights to use the Wolfenstein name, so instead they went with Rise of the Triad, which
I played it. It was okay.
Rise of the Triad isn't great, but it has a certain charm to it.
Yeah, I played a demo of Rise of the Triad. It was all right.
Yeah, I played a lot worse, but you could do a lot worse. You can do a lot better.
Also, for anybody wondering why Apogee sounds so familiar, they are the source of the Duke Nukem.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they're now known these days as 3D Realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier.
We'll get to them later. But then we ended up getting to the game that started out as a D&D experiment that Sandy Peterson was running that got way out of hand with Doom.
It was originally a D&D project?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of Sandy Peterson obviously has as much background in tabletop gaming as he does in video gaming. And he was running D&D campaigns with people at id. And originally the idea that they wanted to do was going to be this hybrid of Alien and Evil Dead, but they couldn't get any rights on the matter.
Yeah.
So
you know how it is
with
with movie tie-in games at the time. That's a no-no.
Well, trying to get one of them would have been difficult. Trying to get both of them is impossible.
Yeah, it's a Herculean task.
But eventually, that was in the very early production moments, and then Doom came around. And look, I have put in more hours into way too many different versions of Doom than I care to admit, including a good chunk of source ports, of which GZ Doom is probably the most reliable.
Please tell me you played Brutal Doom.
Well, yeah, I've used Brutal Doom as a mod on GZ Doom. GZ Doom is just a means of porting Doom over to the source engine.
Yeah, it's a framework.
Yeah, so it makes a more reliable framework when it comes to modding it. Now,
Oh yeah, I've played mod. I've played a Doom mod. Actually, a new version of said mod is coming out soon. The Mega Man 8-bit Deathmatch.
yep.
Part of that.
And of course, there's a lot of Doom mod videos that Icarus Lives has put out.
I think I've seen a few of those videos.
Yeah, people have done some crazy shit with Doom's framework. Now, when it comes to the first Doom, obviously that was a marvel and is still always going to go down in history as one of the most important milestones in gaming. But like with a lot of early game devs, there were moments of cheating. Namely the fact that Doom technically is not a 3D game.
Yeah. See, here's the way the tech works for Doom. Basically, if you've ever pulled up the map in Doom, you've always noticed how it's always been a flat 2D plane.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, that's actually how it's designed. Because the way it works is that it just it's all really like all flat plane, but it just has certain markers that make it look like it's 3D.
This also means that there are certain elevation tricks you can use because sprites technically have infinite height.
Which is why you can hit certain sprites when you're quote unquote up in an area you can't be hit by just shooting straight forward and still hitting them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that explains why you played the SNES port of Doom. That port was actually pretty well done as best you can get for that system.
I did think it was cute to put the thing in a red cartridge.
Yeah. Problem is Maximum Carnage beat him to it.
Side note, Cure, are we counting official or unofficial ports? Because I think if we're counting unofficial ports, Doom has been ported a lot more than Sonic 1.
Yeah.
Probably rivals Skyrim in ports.
No, it exceeds Skyrim in ports. It's been around longer and ported much longer.
Look, it runs Doom has been a pejorative for years.
I've seen literally on Twitter, there was a person who got Doom to run on the digital monitor of a digital pregnancy test. I am not joking. I am not joking.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I can verify.
Now, I've even though I've never put in official times, I have made attempts at speed running Doom, mostly because it's way easier. But even with that, Doom is one of the early examples of an unwritten rule I've had with shooters. Never play on the highest difficulty because if I'm playing, I'm usually playing on ultra violence. I never play on Nightmare.
Playing on Nightmare is a death sentence.
It's not that I.
Let me explain the difference. Mm-hmm. The biggest difference between ultraviolence and Nightmare is ultraviolence. Monsters don't respawn.
Yep.
Respawn. Yeah. I know the tale. Nightmare. We're talking Ninja Gaiden levels of respawning.
Mm-hmm.
They just never stop. They keep coming back more and more until you eventually get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and considering that. Sometimes I like to try and go for 100% runs. Nightmare is not going to be feasible. Now, of course, even with that, I'll be honest. I'd hesitate to recommend somebody marathoning Doom because Doom starts off hot and ends kind of weak. Especially since the Spider Mastermind has always been meh as a final boss, and I know a lot of people talk up the Cyber Demon, but I've beaten him enough times that he's not as much of a threat. Well, on his own. When we get into groups, that's another matter. But
yeah, the other problem with Doom is that the hunt for keys can be quite exhausting.
Oh, we'll get to a worst case of key hunting later. Just you wait.
Yeah, key fetching.
No, I'm not.
Red Axe,
talking.
no, we're talking about the original. We're talking about the original Doom, the '90s version.
Yeah. Now, but to be honest, with the thing that I appreciate with something like Doom is that every enemy very clearly has a frame that telegraphs what it's going to do. There is only one enemy in the original Doom that I absolutely despised, and a lot of people would be surprised when I say which one it is, because some would think that it'd be the Pinkies. Well, the Pinkies are annoying, but they're not that big of a problem.
No.
It's the fucking Lost Souls.
Yep.
Oh,
Those
Lost Souls aren't that bad.
Oh, you think it's
They're
bad?
not bad individually. They're not bad individually. Like, if you only have to deal with like a couple of them, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, especially going back to those pain elementals, when you summon a whole bunch of them and they just start swarming you.
Yeah.
That's why you save a rocket for the pain elemental, and then you use a rapid fire gun for the remaining Lost Souls.
A lot of times I would use plasma rounds for Lost Souls because even in the first Doom they often appear in groups. Like you're not often going to see a single Lost Soul. You're usually going to see them in like groups of 2 or 3, and as soon as they spot you, they're going to be bum rushing you.
Mm-hmm.
And just get right in your face. And considering how auto aim works, that can sometimes lead to misfires, which is the reason why I ended up getting killed by a cyber demon more often than the cyber demon itself. Because the auto aim would screw me over, and remember, rockets have splash damage.
Yeah. and remember, folks, the auto aim was actually kind of unavoidable in the original Doom because, as we mentioned earlier, everything was technically on a flat plane. Mm-hmm. So it was literally just shooting ahead, but it would auto-correct to go up or down if that's where the enemy was hiding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, aim at center, shoot, you'll hit something.
And I should note that at that time I was just using a keyboard. I wasn't using mouse and keyboard.
You're using a keyboard.
No, back then, mouse and keyboard wasn't something they had really developed. And let's be honest, even if they did, using a mouse on the original Doom wouldn't exactly help much.
Yeah, you couldn't look up or down anyway. There was no y-axis for the look.
But then when it came to Doom 2, which was where the series really got its reputation, and but before I delve into that, I do need to make one little side note, and that is the one expansion that the original Doom got as part of Ultimate Doom, known as Thy Flesh Consumed, which I might be able to do a good chunk of the original Doom with pistol starts. Not so much with with Thy Flesh Consumed, because it has some moments of outright dickery.
Oh.
Along with some of the weirdness that came with whenever American McGee would do maps. Like,
oh man, and then from that, American McGee made a name for himself. But that's a later.
That's a story for another day.
Yeah. But there are, of course there were the old classic monsters that still fit into new paradigm. But when it comes to the reason why you're more often going to see me playing Doom 2 instead of 1 is for one specific weapon, the holy grail of any sort of slug ammo use, the super shotgun.
Oh yeah.
The silver sword of blazing barrels upon which he brings retribution.
Yep. And because of that, a lot of those small time enemies that were an annoyance, especially Lost Souls, they become a non-factor with the super shotgun. Just one shot and they're done.
Especially get right up close and personal with it. Get a double barrel shot right in their face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bye.
But when it came to the enemies that they added, chain gunners are bastards. Fortunately, they don't show up in groups yet. We'll get to that later. The Archvile is the true motherfucker.
And they brought him back for Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck the fucking Archvile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Archviles. What you talking about?
You masochistic bastard.
Sadistic. Taking them out first is a true joy.
Yeah. I'd say the one enemy that didn't really get its own particular niche until the reboots was the Hell Knight. In the old days, he was kind of a reskin of the Baron of Hell, which is okay. And then they did the redesign for Doom 3, and then finally gave him some kind of niche as being a up close brawler in 2016. The sole reason I point that out is because that was one that they couldn't really nail, and let's be honest, just recoloring a existing sprite isn't all that interesting.
No.
The one enemy that I can, and the same goes with giving a plasma weapon to the Arachnotrons, which the manual claims that it makes them more dangerous. It really doesn't. Spider Masterminds are hit scanners, so they're always going to be worse. But then there was the Pain Elemental. Fuck him.
Ugh. An enemy that summons more enemies, never a good idea.
Well, not only that, it summons the enemy I hate the most.
All Lost Souls, yeah.
Exactly. So now you got a double whammy of fuck you.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pain Elemental really by itself is not a big thing. Once you clear out enough Lost Souls to get your shots in on the Elemental, it goes down very, very, very quick.
Yeah, it goes down.
Also gives you a chance to shove a grenade launcher up their butt.
Well, at least later at Doom Eternal, you'll get a little nice little retribution on these assholes.
Yeah. Now
We'll talk about that later.
when it came now, of course, there have been plenty of mods when it comes to Doom when it came to Doom 2. There are only, but both Doom 1 and 2 have that one level that I don't care for. Doom 1, I hated Slough of Despair.
Ooh.
Because hey, let's make a map shaped like a hand in a game that doesn't do well with those kind of angles. What could go wrong there?
Mhm.
Yeah, Slough of Despair gets kind of shit. The map in Doom 2 that I don't care for is the Chasm. Because you've got to walk on these tiny ledges, and unfortunately, this game does not have fall damage. So if you fuck up, you've got to go right back to the beginning, and it was one of those things that could be cute in a game years down the line, but Doom 2 did not have the kind of precision to be able to pull off those sort of catwalks.
No. That's the kind of thing where you're pulling up your map and you're adjusting yourself every step.
Yeah. And well, for me it gave me it gave me terrible flashbacks to the balance beam when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But when Final Doom came around, there were two.
Whoa. If we're gonna talk about Doom 2, we cannot leave that without talking about the ending of that game.
Oh yes, the icon of sin.
Oh yeah.
Hey, John Romero's severed head. Everyone knows.
For those who've never heard, okay.
Head.
For those who have never heard about this, yeah, true fact. If you use the no clip cheat to go into the icon of sin, what you're actually shooting at is a digitized head of John Romero on a stick.
Yeah, that's the hitbox sprite.
Yeah.
That's the hitbox spray. And the reason why you have to use the rocket launcher is it's just low enough that no bullet even could go through the hole and angle it to hit him. You have to use the rocket launcher or something with explosion damage to be able to get a hit on him.
Yeah.
Make sure you get a hit on his cheek.
Yeah, and the thing is, the icon of sin when it first shows up starts speaking in a language you can't understand, and it's just a backwards rendition of "To win the game, you must kill me, John Romero."
They knew what they were doing.
Yep.
But when it came now with Final
Maybe John
Doom,
Romero should have stayed dead at the end of Doom 2.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
The funny thing is, you can tell exactly when a photo was taken of John Romero just by his hair. It's like it's like looking at tree rings.
Yes. So he's either barely awake or he's on one of his benders.
Yep.
The latter.
I would argue that John Romero's hair is actually more accurate than tree rings, but I digress.
Yeah. But
Final Doom.
Yeah, with Final Doom, which is of course a amusing bit of irony to name your game that there were two expansions. The first one, I'll get to the bad one first, was TNT Evolution. TNT. It originally was going to be a free map until Romero ended up buying the rights, and people called the modders sellouts. But TNT Evolution is the one episode I don't like playing in Doom 2 because it's really fucking boring. You've got these long winding ass maps that are full of enemies that you can take out way too easily, and just not really engaging when it comes to combat. And that's why you're not going to see a whole lot of people speedrunning TNT Evolution, because it's a case of a lot of people seem to have this idea that bigger maps is better. This is my counter argument. Because after about 7 or so maps with TNT Evolution, even when I'm playing on Ultra Violence, I start to zone out.
So basically, I think that's the problem with bigger stages. Yeah, bigger. It's only better if there's actually substance to it. But you just can't put a huge ass stage with nothing in it.
No.
So it looks like the best speed demos archive entry for Ultraviolence, single segment run on TNT Evolution is 55 minutes 34 seconds, all the way back in 2002.
Oh my word!
Nobody's attempted and submitted, or nobody's just attempted.
Well, that's speed demos archive. That's actually outdated. So
Yeah,
I'll check another site, but we'll move on. We'll keep going.
If let me know if somebody's actually beaten that time, because I could imagine 55 minutes. That seems pretty accurate. I'd imagine that the actual record is around 45 minutes.
Again, maybe nobody's attempted and submitted again.
Not that I can't blame them, because I'm pretty sure.
Okay, let's see. Ultraviolence speed. First, the most recent run was 37 minutes and 1 second. That was about a year ago.
Wow.
Not bad.
There's still people speedrunning it?
Yeah. Apparently.
You dig deep enough, you'll find people speedrunning anything.
There's a few runners for the speed run, and if for max play, it's 3 hours. That was like,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then we get to the one that is one of my favorite episode of Final Doom, but also the one I'd have a hard time recommending to people. The Plutonia Experiment.
Oh.
So good.
This was made by the Casali brothers. And Dario Casali, who was the chief of the project, would later go on to work at Valve. So that's moving up in the world.
Yeah.
At least it was at that time.
Yeah, and both of them actually have pretty impressive resumes. I think Mario Casali has done a lot of work at Ubisoft for years. But the approach that they wanted to do was in an interview with Doomworld. I think Dario Casali had said that he specifically made the Plutonia experiment for people who had already beaten Doom 2 on Ultraviolence and wanted a new challenge. And Plutonia is definitely a new challenge because it is very, very good at understanding just how to use enemy placements to make monsters give you a really bad time. It's also where chain gunners get even worse because it likes really getting abusive with both chain gunners and revenants, and as well as hiding archviles in places so they keep reviving chain gunners.
Yeah, the Plutonia experiment was the place where they decided to just make everything a dick move. The game.
Pretty much. There's the first map for the Plutonia experiment has two archviles and at least 8 revenants.
Ooh.
Jesus.
Possibly more, and lots of traps. And then there was the infamous.
I was going to say, for those who don't remember, remnants are the giant walking skeletons with missile launchers on their shoulders.
That
Homing
can fly
missiles.
in later
Think about
games.
Those missiles in the old days were had homing capacity.
Uh-huh.
So that makes it even worse. But what ends up helping the Plutonia experiment is the maps are relatively short. Like if you know what you're doing, you can breeze through a good chunk of the Plutonia maps in less than 5 minutes.
You can do some speed running.
Yeah.
So basically, Evolution's basically if you want to like explore and all that shit. Of course, you might fall asleep for all the filler, but if you just want to just rip and tear, that's Plutonia experiment.
Just for comparison's sake, the current speedrun record for Plutonia experiment is 19 minutes 58 seconds, just under 20.
Yep.
Not bad.
So just to power it, just to give the numbers for the map Congo, map 1 in Plutonia experiment on Ultraviolence, 6 sergeants, 9 imps, 1 cacodemon, 2 archviles, 1 pain elemental, 18 chain gunners, 5 revenants, 4 mancubi.
Yeah. When it obviously that brings me to the game that was the canary in the coal mine for id, even though it is a good game, and that is Quake. Now, the reason I say it's a canary in the coal mine is that this was the game that kind of became the beginning of what's considered id's dark age. So here's the thing. Quake was initially hinted at all the way back in Commander Keen, where they talked about doing a fantasy game called Quake: The Fight for Justice. With Quake guy being instead of being just a lowly fighter, being the most dangerous human on the planet. This is where time has to be put into a factor. The Quake engine only took I think less than 3 months. The Doom engine took about 6. No, sorry, the Wolfenstein engine took a few months. The Doom engine took 6 months, and Wolfenstein was way into development, a year and a half in, and people were starting to get PO'd.
You're crossing your wires as bad as Aaron right now.
Yeah. And this is also where a split kind of happened between Carmack and Romero. Especially since he got busted spending more time deathmatching than actually working. Since Carmack put in a program in his computer that would log in the amount of hours that he was actually working.
Yeah, if you like playing deathmatch, it's like I'm working here.
Yeah, the thing about these two is that they were very polar opposites, and for the longest time that worked because Carmack is the tech guy. He is the guy that came up with the engines, came up with a lot of the technology that are a lot of it still being used today.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see how he is today, it makes sense because this was one of the guys that backed up the Oculus Rift back when it was first starting out.
Mm-hmm.
So like he is a tech guy. Carmack was the designer. He was the guy that came up with
Romero
design. Or Romero was the designer. He was the guy that came up with all the interesting stages, all of the interesting enemies and things like that. He handled that aspect of it. So together, they were like peanut butter and chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually their two opposing ideals were going to eventually rub against each other, and well, this is when it happened.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we see what happens when Romero doesn't have Carmack's help.
Yeah. Daikatana.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
We will get to that.
Now,
oh yeah.
I do want to make clear. If you even nowadays, if you dig deep enough into any game, any 3D game's code, you'll probably find a few lines still from the Quake engine.
Because the Quake engine was like a fully 3D engine at that time.
Yeah,
like one of the most cutting edge.
Well, 3D was possible at that time, but in a lot of cases, it was difficult to render objects in 3D without being too much of a resource hog.
Yeah.
But they found a way.
Yeah, he found a way to render it on so that 3D graphics could be used on consumer level tech. But eventually, the original idea for Quake just gave way to make something Doom-like because it was the mindset of, well, it's going to sell. And I'd say the multiplayer is more remembered than the single player of Quake.
Yes.
I got a feeling that's what pissed off Romero because the multiplayer aspect is extraordinarily technical. I think Carmack is, I would say, pretty proud of it.
And my argument would be that when it came to Quake, unlike Doom, which was very much because of the fact that single player was a thing with consumer level video gaming electronics, since we didn't have things like online multiplayer yet. With Doom, it was very much focused on the single player experience. But Quake was almost always, from the get-go, designed to be an arena shooter and one that could have multiple people playing. Which is why the Quake series is very much still mostly a multiplayer experience. It's always meant to be that multiplayer arena shooter.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that there was no merit to the single player within Quake, but it obviously ended up being a secondary focus. Although it did contribute to history in its own ways, things like quad damage, of course, and the introduction of rocket jumping.
Oh yeah,
and of course the very first online deathmatch.
Yeah, but moreover, I'd say one of the things that definitely helped with Quake was getting Trent Reznor, aka 9 Inch Nails, to do the soundtrack, which this was the only time he would do it because for Quake 2, he turned down the job because he felt the game had no atmosphere.
Yeah,
and that's why they put the 9 Inch Nails logo on the ammunition boxes for nail guns.
Mm-hmm. And when it came to what happened afterwards, it became more about the tech than anything else. And Quake. I want to make clear. Quake 2, Quake 3 Arena. Those were not bad games, but they couldn't hold a candle to what they did before, and that brings me to Now I'm skipping ahead a bit, but this brings me to a very controversial entry in Doom's history, and that is Doom 3.
Oh yeah.
The one for the Xbox that
And like I said, I'm one of Doom 3's defenders here.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you play Doom 3, don't see it as an FPS. See it as sort of a survival horror of sorts.
I think I was going to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing is it's not. It didn't fail because it was a bad game. It failed because it wasn't Doom. It wasn't the Doom that everyone grew up with. If you look on it at its own merits, it's got the story is somewhat intriguing. The survival horror elements, freaking fantastic. The graphics were insane for the time, and still kind of hold up even to this day.
Yeah.
Especially in the lighting department. Good God. The only real actual complaints are the scare closets. Like, it gets ridiculous how many often they pull that trick where, oh, there's an item there. As soon as you grab it, monster comes out of nowhere and attacks you, especially when it's a health item. But that's only one real complaint out of that entire game. The problem is it's not a Doom game. It's its own thing, but it got the Doom name on it, so people got pissed.
There is one other problem that I have with Doom 3. The shotgun is possibly the worst shotgun I've ever seen.
Yes.
Yeah, the shotgun in Doom 3 was terrible. But much like with Doom 3, much like what we see in the gaming world even to this day, slapping a name on a game is not something you can do lightly.
No.
No.
I mean, we've seen the backlash from fans time and time again. Doom 3 was but one of many that have happened over the years. If you take a name from a known series, an acclaimed series, there's going to be a set of expectations that fans of the series have that you have to hit, or the game is going to fail.
Yeah. It's not just gaming, it's everything. Just look at the fucking just look at the sequel trilogy. Yeah.
Look, we're having a good time here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You know what? Screw it. I got a button for this.
Go away! We're having a good time until you shut up, cheapers! Coffee with cream and something, because I'll tell you something. This is a happy place.
Thank you, Freakazoid.
You're welcome.
So the other biggest controversy we've seen since Doom 3, one that is still talked about to even this year, and was definitely talked about last year when Devil May Cry 5 came out, was DMC Devil May Cry by Ninja Theory.
Oh, DMC, yeah.
Yeah, but
Shakespearean writing and better combos than the originals. Thank you.
I like the writing.
Guys, rails.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't.
No, you want to talk about things that happened, like even before Doom 3? We've been dodging the elephant in the room.
Uh-oh.
All right. We've
the moment that John Romero said he was gonna make us his bitch.
Oh, dang. You know what? Hold up. I think that deserves a goddamn drink.
Drink.
That jug.
You know what? I have a bottle of scotch right next to me. I think that calls for a drink.
John Romero thought his own shit couldn't stick.
Now,
honestly, I will play. You might need to get the button ready. I will play Devil's Advocate for a minute when it comes to Daikatana's development.
Come on, get in there. Go!
Because here's the thing: when it came to the reason why it ended up getting delayed so many times was because John Romero kept switching engines, and this is obvious foreshadowing for later. Because what ended up happening. So he did not this was at a time when there was a kind of arms race to make the best engines possible in the PC gaming scene, and originally I think it was supposed to be on the Quake engine, but then the Quake 2 engine came along and was a market improvement. And he said, "All right, we're jumping over to Quake 2, and putting it out through that." Even though he did not have nearly enough time to switch engines, because once he got the source code for the Quake 2 engine, he realized, "Oh shit, this is more complicated than I thought."
No, I thought that was when he was switched over to the Unreal Engine, because I believe he switched to that too.
I'd have
the original Unreal Engine came out around that time, because I believe that's what happened.
How many gaming engine switches did he do anyhow?
He didn't do as many as George Broussard. That, I think, is what you're thinking of, Shades. You're thinking of what happened with Duke Nukem Forever, where that did jump from Quake to Quake 2 to Unreal.
Oh.
Yeah, engine creep.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I'm looking. I'm double checking my info. Yeah, it was Quake 2 where he fucked up.
Yeah,
it was the Quake 2 engine.
Now the weird thing is that the best version of Daikatana is on the Game Boy.
Really?
Mostly because it ends up. He specifically asked for the port of that to play more Zelda-like. I think it was so his kids could play it, but it ends up playing decently. It's definitely an odd choice, but it is what it is. But when it comes to the actual gameplay of it, some people have salvaged it through some bits of modding. But the big problem is getting a bunch of weapons that ended up being useless or had too many quirks. And I
thought the big problem was the companion AI.
Oh yeah, there's of course that as well.
That was the big problem for me.
Although
I didn't care that I had
the game is one giant escort mission. Yeah, that's a problem.
Wait, when your AI is worse than Sheva from 5, from RE5, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why no one likes escort missions.
Unless what you're escorting is invincible.
Elizabeth, I do have to ask John Romero the one question though. Of all the names you could give one of the companions, why the hell did you go with Superfly Johnson?
Again, I refer you back to that marketing campaign. John Romero is about to make you his bitch.
That wasn't his idea.
You can't tell me he didn't have a hand in that.
Yeah.
He actually the story as I've been told,
according to Mike Wilson, that ad was created by the same artist who designed the game's box art under order of their chosen advertising agency.
Yeah.
Originally, both he and Romero thought it was funny and approved it, but Romero had second thoughts soon after and was persuaded by Wilson to let it pass.
Yeah. That's what ended up happening there.
Then again, okay, then fine. I'll put another factor. Let's go back to the Doom 2. Mm-hmm. John Romero's head on a pike. If he's crazy enough to do something like that in the backwards talk, I think weird silly naming conventions isn't that far of a stretch.
No. Of course. Nowadays, I can't play the opening chapter without getting thrown the hell off because the old man at the start of it is played by John Galt, and he's doing the Lo Wang voice.
I swear to God, I don't understand how Daikatana is because like I said, it's like I've been hearing it's like I would say a lot of drugs were involved.
I wouldn't say a lot of drugs were involved. I'd say it's a classic case of hubris. Now that said, not everything that Ion Storm put out was trash because there was Deus Ex was put out by Warren Spector's team, and that is an undisputed classic. And Anachronox, which was kind of an attempt to do a console style RPG was interesting, even if the ending was left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But after that, in the tail end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, the focus started to shift away from the SF laden shooter, even though as Quake kind of sagged into multiplayer focus, Unreal started to show up, and it's probably the only case where the term killer ended up actually being accurate, because Unreal by, at the time, Epic Mega Games did upstage upstage Quake in consciousness.
I still insist that Epic owes me money for Unreal Tournament because they named their main antagonist with my name.
Oh.
Epic, you better give me my money. Zari Enterprises is coming.
Yeah, pay up, bitch!
Anyway, though, are we going to not talk about the other side of the old school FPS coin?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
let's talk about Apogee. Okay, first off, apparently, it's one of the thing that I find kind of the thing that people always seem to find funny is that Duke Nukem, the flag bearer for Kevin Silverman's build engine, which was very revolutionary for its time, but also kind of finicky.
Yep.
Was originally a side-scrolling shooter.
Yeah, and I played those.
The first one was rudimentary, even if PC sound effects can get kind of grating.
Yeah.
Duke Nukem 2 was an absolute marvel, and then of course they retitled themselves 3D Realms, and then things got crazy when they started with the first of what's referred to as the Build Holy Trinity, Duke Nukem 3D.
Yes.
That was the good shit.
Mm-hmm.
And and the funny thing is, a little something you know, back in the day, like way back in the day, we're talking high school. I played around a lot with the build engine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say, let's just say, in order to really master the build engine, they had a book where they show you all the characters, and let's just put it this way: even if you did everything, a few things might turn out wrong.
Doors.
So it was very finicky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the other thing we got to talk about is the character of Duke Nukem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The evolution of that character.
Kick-ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm
now
all
here's the thing.
out of gum.
Here's the thing. If you've ever played the first two Duke Nukems before 3D, he wasn't that kind of guy.
Yeah,
No.
3D was the realm where they decided to reboot him as a semi-parody of every 80s action movie hero ever.
And Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The
I've
funny
got
thing is,
balls of steel.
the funny thing about the first game is they threw in a freaking Oprah joke in there.
Yeah. Which,
Back before Oprah was super relevant, but still relevant enough.
It was relevant enough. This was like 91.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, first two Duke Nukems, even the second one, while he was a little more badass, it was more of the awesome superhero badass, not the I'm gonna fuck you up kind of badass.
Yeah.
That he would later become.
Well, like I said, they rebooted him in
I'm
3D.
gonna rip your neck off and shit down your neck.
Rip your head off and shit down your neck.
I'm gonna rip your head off and shit down your neck.
Yep.
Yeah, and then of course, helped
He looked
by
like
the
that.
awesome voice acting of John St. John.
Mm-hmm.
He's on. Yeah, great voice act. Well, his voice acting is great. As a human being, fuck him. Anyway.
I knew Big the Cat was evil.
when it came to Duke 3D, of course, this is another instance of don't play on the hardest difficulty because
No.
The only way to keep monsters from reviving in Duke Nukem 3D on its hardest difficulty is rockets. You have to blow up the corpses.
You think respawning is bad? Yeah, you don't kill them. The only way you don't kill them, you just knock them out.
Mm-hmm. And with somewhat, I have a hard time believing that I knocked someone out when firing them with the Devastator, for instance, which is two rapid fire rocket launchers.
Oh freaking hell! I love the Devastator.
Yeah, but it's not even rocket; they're little tiny missiles.
Yeah.
So the explosions weren't big enough to cause any serious damage, apparently.
Yeah. But when it came to, like I said, the build engine was a marvel for its time. But as I mentioned, there are 3 games that are referred to as the Holy Trinity when it comes to the build engine. The second of this is Shadow Warrior, and the reason why I keep making Wang jokes.
Uh-huh.
And
I'm going to be honest. I really like the Shadow Warrior, the newer Shadow Warrior reboots, and the fact that we're getting a Shadow Warrior 3.
Yeah, so do I. Flying Wild Hog has done a great job with the Shadow Warrior series.
God, yes.
And
Devolver Digital, of course, doing God's work, publishing every good game you never hear about under the fucking sun.
Yeah,
of course.
Now, when it came to the original Shadow Warrior, it is very much a classic, but it has its moments of cruelty.
Oh boy.
Now, first off, this did give us the running meme of nuke launching, and it's one where you have to fire and run because if you're too close to the nuke, you'll end up taking yourself out too.
Yeah.
It did have a particular bit of annoyance with, say, the Shadow Ninjas, which could do those annoying ass AoE attacks. There's also the fact that with Shadow Warrior, and this is another case of foreshadowing, I ended up developing a bit of a habit of trying to bounce grenades into a room to clear people out before I go in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a big quirk of the build engine is that with hit scanners in say the Doom engine, they'll move a bit before they start shooting. In the build engine, as soon as they've got line of sight with you, they start firing. And if multiple enemies that are hit scanners have line of sight with you, they all start firing.
And you die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why an effective strategy is preemptive bombing.
Sounds a lot like the U.S. Military doctrine.
Yeah. Now it did get one expansion.
2.
And well, I'm getting to that second one. The second one never fully released. It was going to be developed by Sunstone, who were at the time the king of doing expansions for other build engine games. But I think either Sunstone went under or it just never came out. And then one of the developers put the thing out as freeware.
Yeah, they released the maps on March 22nd, 2004.
Now, of course, if you have Shadow Warrior Redux, you'll get all of them. But when it comes now, the third of which, and this is my absolute favorite game on the build engine, is Blood.
Blood is a classic that I don't hear enough people talk about.
Yeah, but I've never heard of Blood. That's for sure.
I mean, Duke Nukem said he would rip people's heads off and shit down their neck. There's a scene in the Blood games where the protagonist does that.
Actually, to be fair, Duke, after you kill off the Overlord in the second episode, he does that.
Yeah,
he does. He actually does.
He does.
But Blood is a 3D game where the antagonist does, or the protagonist does that.
There's some interesting quirks that Blood has that the other two build engine games don't. One of them is that explosions are not necessarily static. it's more of an expanding sphere, and that's why you can have effects where explosions knock enemies around, which wasn't all that common at the time. And I want to note that when it came to shooters, Monolith has done absolute bangers over the years. But when it came to Blood, it was obvious it was going for a more gothic horror feel. I mean, obviously going with horror is nothing new, given what I mentioned about Doom, but they were going for more Universal and Hammer style horror instead of science fiction horror. Which was a major part of its appeal. And of course, it ended up leading to being the inspiration for one of my favorite manhwa in Priest.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about the movie adaptation of that. I like to talk about good things here.
The movie adaptation is even worse when you realize it's part of a trilogy.
Like I said.
I had to
remind
sink that
me.
nail in. I had to sink that
No, you
nail
didn't.
in.
No, you didn't. You didn't have to do anything. You just really, really wanted to because you're a dick.
Yeah.
Only the monk. Monk knows I do it because I love him.
Anyway, but the thing that's tricky about recommending Blood is that compared to the other two in the Trinity, Blood is the hardest. Even on easy difficulty, Blood's going to give you a hard time.
Yeah, I mean you are fighting against the dark god Chernobog. It kind of figures.
Yeah, but if there's any advice that can be given is one, remember that all weapons have secondary fires, so and they can be useful. Two, remember the all-encompassing importance of setting enemies on fire. You will very much learn to love these sticks of dynamite that you throw, and something that I find interesting when it comes to the dynamite, because it's basically your grenades. You even have remote and proximity versions of it. Is the fact that it has a weird thing where it's not just a one and done throw that's always in a certain arc. The amount of distance that you get from it depends on how long you hold the button. So hold it down for a little bit, you'll only throw it a short distance. Hold it down for a lot, you'll get a longer distance. And of course, the thing's going to bounce before it fires. But be very careful not to hold on it too long, otherwise you're going to blow yourself up because it is a lit fuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like cooking any other grenade.
Yep.
Oh wait, cooking grenades was kind of invented with this.
And of course, and the main reason that I say setting enemies on fire is going to be important is one of the first weapons that you're going to get is a flare gun. Which, yeah, you're basically going to be using it as a pistol, but you shoot an enemy with it. Of course, they're going to catch fire. You do enough fire damage with them, and then the sprite will change to them burning up and running all over the place and not firing at you.
Yeah, catching groups of enemies on fire was the best tactical choice you could make.
Yes. Now Blood did get 2 expansions. One of them better than the other. I don't like Postmortem. I don't think anybody likes Postmortem.
I try not to think about it.
Yeah. But Blood also had a phenomenal voice actor doing Caleb. In this case, it was Stephen Waite.
Yep.
Who he does stuff here and there, but compared to say John St. John, he doesn't do a whole lot. And I hadn't heard his voice in anything I had purchased until I bought Dusk, which we'll get to later. But Of course, if somebody is digging into blood, I'll say this: grab fresh supply, and if anybody offers you the sequel, turn them away immediately. Blood 2 sucks because Monolith tried to make their own engine called Lith Tech, and
it didn't end well, did it?
it wasn't. Lith Tech was very buggy, which is the reason why the project that they had worked on before Blood 2, Shogo Mobile Armor Division, is not a good game. It's very, very rough. Very in the words of Gordon Ramsay, fucking raw.
It's raw.
Don't worry, Civvy, your check will be in the mail as soon as I get my money from WotC for pissing me off.
So, reasons you may have not heard Steven in other games until dusk is because likely not many people have played any of these games.
Yeah,
the Pajama Sam series.
I played the first one.
He was in the first one, yeah. Or Freddy Fish 3. Or Haunted Childhood.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
Yeah. One everybody has heard him in if they played this failure of a Metroid game is Metroid Other M. See the pattern? The pattern is he gets maybe one good game in a decade, literally. Blood to Dusk. That's an 11-year jump. No, that's a 21-year jump, excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes like I said, this particular style of shooter started to fall by the wayside, mostly because a lot of people were sick of what was referred to as Doom clones. Even though some of them, I'd hesitate to qualify as a Doom clone. I think the earliest example of me hearing that was with Heretic, which forms a kind of trilogy with Heretic, Hexen, and Hexen 2. Heretic 2 is a whole other beast.
I love the Heretic series.
I do as well, and the only one that you can't buy nowadays is Heretic 2, so that one you'd have to sail the high seas for.
Yeah.
It is. I'd say it is worth it because that was developed by Raven Software, just before they would eventually perfect lightsaber combat with Jedi Outcast.
So, Heretic 2 is very interesting, by the way, in the fact that it's technically the fourth game in the Beyond Heretic series.
Yeah.
And comes after the whole Serpent Rider trilogy.
Also, it's one of the rare cases of a game that has an elf that doesn't piss me off.
Yeah, that's a short list.
Mm-hmm. The only problem that I had with there's only two problems I've had with Heretic and the Hexen series. Like in Heretic, enemies could get a little bit too tanky.
Oh yeah. Freaking bullet sponging.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially and fuck the Iron Liches. What with their tornadoes that always find ways to fuck you over.
To expand upon why Heretic 2 is not accessible, it's another reason to hate Bethesda, everybody.
Oh yeah.
When ZeniMax bought id, the rights for the series are disputed between id and Raven because Raven holds development rights, but id holds publishing rights. And so until both companies can come to some sort of legal agreement, there's not going to be any other installment, and Heretic 2 will remain in the vault.
Which is the reason why I keep trying to highlight games that are very clear spiritual successors to Heretic or Hexen. Now the other problem that I have is now this wasn't as much of a problem in Heretic, but it was a problem in Hexen. Switch hunting.
Oh yeah.
Do you know how many times I
got
got
hunting in Doom was bad? You have not played Hexen and having to find the switches hiding behind weird crevices all over the goddamn place. Especially since you had to go find a switch in one level just to go back to the main hub to open up the next level.
Yeah.
Oh, so basically, it's sort of like the fuse box thing from the Thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a way, yeah. And yeah, it was kind of an open world thing. Like you'd have a main hub, and then you just go into different realms, find search switches and items there, and then go on, and then you have to go back and forth between them to find everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Like
do you know how long
it wasn't
some
just one
people-
stage after the other.
Yeah. Do you know how long some people, including myself at one point, got stuck on like the second or third world of Hexen because the goddamn switch was unfindable?
Oh, God.
And this was before the widespread advent of internet strategy guides. GameFAQs was in its infancy.
Yeah,
So there weren't a lot of
guide
people.
dang it.
Yep. This is a guy damn it moment, exactly. That trope
is,
was
absolutely
very
is.
prevalent in Hexen.
You're not
Right.
beating that game without a guide or a lot of free time.
Yeah.
Yep.
For me, it was a lot of free time. I was, still a relatively responsibility-free child.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, if it got to the point of frustration, well, guide dang it to me.
Now, before I delve into the shift that happened in the early 2000s, one that I do want to touch on that was referred to as a Doom clone, but I don't think that's fair, is the original System Shock.
System Shock was nowhere near a Doom clone.
I'm not
game
saying
that-
it was. I'm saying
Yeah.
people slagged it as one.
And all those people, by anyone who knew anything, got rightfully bitch smacked for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't played much of the original System Shock. I've obviously played System Shock 2 because who the fuck hasn't? But I played a little bit of the original System Shock. No, it is anything but a Doom clone.
And
The only reason you call it a Doom clone is because it's a first-person game. It's not even really a first-person shooter.
No.
It's a survival horror RPG.
And I'd say it has I'd say I really like its take on survival horror more than others because of the fact that, as Mandalore pointed out in his review of the Enhanced Edition, which is the one I can actually recommend to people, you are a rat in a maze, and the person overseeing the maze, like a scientist would oversee a rat maze, is Shodan.
Yeah, for those who, simply put, you guys thought GLaDOS was a psycho AI. You have not met Shodan.
Shodan she's basically the computer generated. What happens if you computer generated an ex-girlfriend?
Pretty much. And
Not just any type of ex-girlfriend, the crazy redhead ex-girlfriend.
Oh, that's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Shodan is that cranked to 11.
And the thing is, there is until the end of the game, there is no true escape from her. Like, she is constantly watching, and even areas that you think are going to be relatively safe, you get a certain item and mutants show up.
Not only that, there are a few places where you can stop for breathers. Just don't stop for breathers too long. Remember, you're on a timer.
Yep.
The whole game's on a timer.
If I recall correctly, optionally, you can turn the timer off if you want to.
You can, but I believe the intended default effect was that timer.
Yeah, it's kind of like how there was the timer with the original Fallout, but later ports would make that optional.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, eventually that particular style kind of phased out, and instead, the aim was more for a simulationist approach to shooters. I'd say one of the early adopters of this was Operation Flashpoint, but the approach that everybody is the most familiar with is the Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six series. And with those, you had the thing that made that sort of thing different, as well as similar games like Brothers in Arms, was one, a focus on realism. Two, a focus on a combined whole group instead of one badass. And of course, the big one in those days was Medal of Honor, and a focus on the
Medal of Honor, though.
I doffed my cap.
You are forgetting one more game from that era. You've missed a big one.
Which one?
Half-Life.
Oh yeah, the game that pretty much killed a lot of that old school cheese.
Yeah.
Still, with Medal of Honor, I doff my cap.
Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why I bring up Medal of Honor specifically is eventually there was a split in how things were going to go, and the people who broke away from Medal of Honor would eventually form Infinity Ward, and that was how we ended up getting Call of Duty. Now, I know it's easy to hate on Call of Duty nowadays. Believe me, there have been some recent entries in that series that I absolutely do not care for. Basically, almost everything after Black Ops 2.
But if you were there during the days of not even Modern Warfare, the original Call of Duty, because I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had a local LAN place. You know, it was basically they had a whole bunch of LAN PCs. It was basically like a net cafe, but just for gaming.
Yep.
And the game that every motherfucker was playing in there every time I went in for like months on end was fucking Call of Duty.
Yeah.
The original.
Now, for me, my introduction was 2. But in both cases, the thing that's important and the reason why later Call of Duties ended up sucking is misunderstanding. One of the major points with Call of Duty was the fact that it was not a power fantasy. It was the exact opposite of it. You were just another soldier in the largest conflict in human history.
Yeah, this was the era of the World War II shooters because Medal of Honor was doing the same damn thing.
And the other thing to point out was with it was that they wanted to have a more relentless approach, which was the reason why regenerating health became a thing, because if they had gone with traditional health packs, it would have killed the pacing. And up through the first Modern Warfare, that particular grounded approach was more or less maintained. Even if it started to shift from being a regular soldier to being some form of special forces. But then something happened. And while I enjoy Modern Warfare 2, I cannot deny the fact that it shifted away from being a grounded depiction of war into a Hollywood action movie.
Oh yeah, it started becoming like the Hurt Locker, the game.
Yeah. Now I do want to note that not every game followed that sense, because World at War was still in the vein of the very grounded approach, and its sequel Black Ops and Black Ops 2 took that route as well. And with World at War, it was the first instance of showing the Pacific Theater, even though it didn't get shown as much. But the one thing that I'll always remember with World at War is not the Pacific Theater campaign, which was just okay, but rather the Russian campaign, because it brought us the absolute best bro that I swear to God could probably talk anybody into going into battle for him, and that is Reznov.
Love that dude.
Reznov is Reznov is one of the best supporting characters in the entire series. Especially putting aside the fact that it kind of goes into the thing that's interesting about the Russian campaign is that it's largely based on Stalingrad, and through it you of course go all the way up to the siege, and Reznov starts out as fairly straight-laced, but gets more and more brutal throughout the campaign. But it ends up all working out with you reenacting one of the most iconic scenes from that battle of planting the flag up. Then of course Black Ops happened, which is really damn good, and while of course Nazi zombies had the craziness involved, Black Ops took things in an interesting direction by going more for spy fiction, because obviously it's taking place during the Cold War. It did end up causing a bit of controversy when it seemed like it was reenacting the Bay of Pigs incident.
Then again, by this point, Call of Duty had already become known for having that one controversial moment in every game. You know, we brought up a Russian guy in World at War. Yeah, it kind of paints that picture in Modern Warfare 2. Makes that one scene in Modern Warfare 2 look a little more saddening when you think about it.
Yeah. When it comes to that, I think what ended up happening is the most infamous case of this sort of moment is the nuke scene in Modern Warfare.
Yep.
Yeah, the original that scene, because of how well it was done. Like you had this moment where it's like you finish the mission, everything's going good, you're getting airdropped, getting airlifted out, and then you hear the news on the radio, you hear the word on the radio, the incoming nuke, and you're like, there's no way they'd actually do it. They're going to get away in time. Then you see from inside the copter, like this isn't a cutscene. This isn't like a full animated a full CG cutscene. No, in game, you see the bomb go off in the background and the copter crashing, and you're right in the thick of it. And then you black out and you wake up, and you're still in your soldier's body, as in the aftermath with all of that nuclear radiation, crawling your way through the ground until you finally just give in and succumb to your injuries and die. Like it was probably one of the most memorable scenes in video games in a long time. I'd say at least top 20, if not top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
And the problem is that the developers at Infinity Ward looked at that and go, so how the fuck do we top that?
And thus the infamous No Russian came along. Although at the very least, the shocking moments that were in Black Ops, those at least had a point, because like for instance, the whole thing with Castro, that was a fake out. And it kind of sets the tone for a lot of Black Ops as a whole. What you're seeing is not what actually is happening. Now, since Crunch did bring up Battlefield, I do want to touch on that a bit. That took the World War II approach in a different direction, namely making everything upscaled.
And then of course we got the Bad Company series.
Well, we'll get to that, but the original Battlefield games, like, Call of Duty thrived in multiplayer. Battlefield was made for multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are the bane to Call of Duty's Batman.
Yep. But of course, when it came to Black Ops, I think one of my favorite scenes in that is twofold. One, going into the Pentagon and nearly shooting President Kennedy. Two is the prison break scene. Getting to have a intimate understanding of why Viktor Reznov did what he did what he did. Namely, is the fact that he saw possibly one of the bravest men he ever fought alongside be used as nothing more than a nerve gas experiment. And thus we have the infamous line that is even saved as an audio file on the wiki. Dragovich, Kwachenko, Steiner. These men must die.
Oh, God.
It's all must die, but
Yep. But
Yeah, Kira. Yeah, Kira. What about Half-Life?
Look, when it comes to I'm trying to avoid talking about Half-Life so I don't have to bring up Half-Life 2 and then get pissed off. I've already
let's boil it down to this. Half-Life as a series had both revolutionized that storytelling in shooting games, because storytelling in shooting games at that point was usually about historic events rather than creating your own, and also obviously revitalized physics engines in games. So, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Now
we don't need to talk about Epistle 3 and the fact that Mark Laidlaw basically laid down what Half-Life 3 would have been.
Yeah. Now, with all of that in mind, the reason why I highlight that shift into a more Hollywood movie-like approach is that it ended up having a misunderstanding of what made these kind of games work, in the sense that they were designed to not be an empowerment fantasy. Like, you look at Doom, you look at Quake, you look at even Halo. All of these are very much power fantasies. With Call of Duty, not only were they trying to make a power fantasy, but they were trying to make a power fantasy by paradoxically taking power away from you.
Oh God, yeah.
And a lot of this comes down to having much too reliance on scripted set pieces that, while they may look impressive and all, the problem is you're not actually doing anything.
I wanted to watch a movie, I'd watch a goddamn movie.
Now, I do want to touch on Halo for a bit, because that's an interesting case, since that kind of became the flag bearer for arena shooting for several years. What's interesting about Halo's development is that it ended up changing genres twice.
Oh.
Like, first it was meant to be originally they wanted to go a little RTS-y. Then it ended up shifting into a third-person action game, and then finally into an FPS. And Crunch, I will give you props for Republic Commando being one of your favorites. That's one of mine as well.
Oh yeah.
Who wouldn't want to fight alongside Sev? Even if you want to keep him at a very lengthy distance, because he might do something. But when it came to, now, obviously Bungie was no stranger to shooters. I mean, they already had established a name for themselves with Marathon. But the development of the first Halo was described by Bungie as assembling a cathedral in a hurricane. While exploring the Halo ring was definitely a marvel and one of the things that helped define the Xbox, Halo, the original, did have a bit of a bad habit in its campaign of telegraphing what kind of enemies would show up. Like, if you're going to be dealing with a hunter in a certain area, you'd probably end up finding overshield pickups. As well as the pistol, the most overpowered pistol in any FPS.
Good God.
It was only more overpowered in Halo 2 than it was in Halo 1.
Well, there was something else that ended up being overpowered in Halo 2, but I'll get to that in a minute.
dual wield spears.
But if you're going to be in an area that was going to have Covenant vehicles, you'd probably find a rocket launcher beforehand, and it kind of goes into that habit. Also, fuck the library and the floods suck.
Yeah.
Flood aren't that bad.
They're not. To me, they just weren't fun to fight.
No, they were just annoying. They just kept coming, and they were zombies. They were bad zombies. They just kept shambling towards you.
And the thing is, when zombie type enemies, that only really works when you've got a lot of them, and you're being pinned against a wall. But even with that, there's a reason why I don't like Serious Sam, because all you're doing is just backing up and firing.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the stages with the Flood in the original Halo, except for the choke points where you had to kill everybody to finish your elevator ride and or open the next door, they were meant to move you along. You were meant to just keep running.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily meant to be fight all the Flood so that you can explore this at your leisure.
Yeah.
It was run, so that they don't get you.
Yeah.
And they achieved that to great success.
Now, when it came to Halo 2, if I had said that Halo 1's development was chaotic, Halo 2's development was hell.
Oh boy.
I've heard.
Because they had midway into development, they had to start from scratch.
Yep.
Oh, they had to blow. So basically, during development, they had to blow it up.
Here's what ended up happening, and this is why they didn't make this mistake again. First off, the reveal footage that they showed on show floors was advertised as real-time footage. But the problem is that they were doing this with what they were advertising as a brand new engine, but they were having way too many. But some of the things that were shown in that footage, they were having a hard time actually implementing in a less controlled environment. So they had to basically scrap everything, and there was a lot, and I mean a lot of stuff, story and content wise, that was left on the cutting room floor. Along with some stuff that was put on the cutting room floor, but they absolutely hated how it turned out. Chief among this is the Scarab.
Oh,
the big ass Covenant spider tank. Bungie has gone on record that they hated how it turned out. It was way too scripted, and one of the 3D designers said that the thing looked absolutely horrible, like it looked like a giant basket. Which, yeah, it kind of does. But of course, when it came to multiplayer with the first Halo, it was serviceable, but it did have a bad habit of where you spawn ends up leading way too quick into a firefight, so you could have some griefing problems. But the other problem was this is why I say the pistol is overpowered. 3 shots, dead.
Well,
Dude, so
in Halo 2, it was...
They gave you a freaking hand cannon to start you off with?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and in Halo 2, it was 2 shots dead if you got headshots with both hits.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
and you could do
but
it.
Of course,
you had a limited zoom with the pistol, too.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, no talk about Halo. And I know I'm going to get some groans as soon as I bring this up, but there is no talking about Halo without talking about what spawned from it. Red versus blue.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Now, the early days of Red versus Blue were very primitive, and eventually they did gradually improve. But it is when you consider what they had to work with, it is certainly impressive. Now being said, obviously the current state of Rooster Teeth is chaotic. But at the time,
Understatement.
At the time, when they were only doing Red versus Blue, that was definitely their absolute peak. And of course it gave us our favorite idiot, and yes, he is an idiot, Caboose.
yeah,
To which I remember there was that conversation about. So let's say I hired you to kill Caboose. Would you do it? Is this a hypothetical discussion, or should we start crunching numbers?
I do it for free. Do it for free.
Better tell me how much it is. I ain't cheap.
Mm-hmm. But when it came, when it came to when it the one of the big problems that 1 and 2 both have is what I call the Destiny arena, where you're effectively fighting waves off while some NPC is trying to open a door or something like that.
Oh yeah.
There's also the fact that the introduction to the Arbiter, who look, no disrespect to the Arbiter, but the way he was introduced, it's like this is there was no precedent for him. Yes, elites showed up, but why should we care about this elite not screwing up by that point? This was one of those lost in the in all the chaos kind of moments. Now, when it came to the multiplayer for Halo 2, despite all the stuff that was in it, they actually planned for more. Like the early beta of it has the hintings of the theater mode that would be in Halo 3. But the thing that I'll always remember was a certain tech that I've referenced plenty of times. 2 of them, in fact, that were a case of we didn't plan for this. Are any of you familiar with BXR?
Nope.
Can't say that I have.
Now, here's the thing. The battle rifle was meant to be a jack-of-all-trades weapon. You know, not as good at close range as the shotgun, not as good at long range as the sniper rifle. A middle ground kind of thing. Unfortunately, go ahead.
I just want to say, guys, you may not know the term as BXR, but I'm sure you've seen it. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's played Halo long enough has.
Yeah. What ends up happening is you hit B to do a melee, which of course is gonna really mess up with someone's shields. Then you hit X to cancel out the animation right after the melee hit, and then you hit R to fire. So you're going from one frame of melee, and then the next frame you're firing the battle rifle.
And that killed almost anybody who didn't have overshields.
Yeah.
You can also do it.
It ended up turning a jack-of-all-trades weapon into a close-range weapon.
Yep. You could also do it with a couple of other weapons. Mm-hmm. Pistol, obviously.
Yeah.
And a shotgun, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of people liked to BXR with the shotguns because shotguns were a guaranteed kill at that point. You couldn't do it with a lot of Covenant weapons because Covenant weapons were either rapid fires with overheat or they were charge weapons.
If I recall correctly, the majority of Covenant weapons were projectile, not hit scan.
Yes, most of them were projectile, which again is a part of the reason why it didn't work very well. But if you look at just about every Covenant weapon in the game, mm-hmm. All of them require some sort of build-up to kill, which is why dual-wielded Needlers was so prevalent. You could super condense with just a little bit of holding both your triggers.
Yep.
And then everybody died.
Yeah.
And then they took it out in Halo 3 because they realized, oh my god, this is way too overpowered for multiplayer.
Yeah. But even with that, I will honestly defend it to a degree because when it comes to BXR or when it came to a similar thing with Double Shot, you really need timing because if you screw up the timing, you're going to be left wide open.
Yeah, if you get any of the frames wrong, you're stuck in one of the animations.
Mm-hmm. Now certain combos like moving out of the boundaries, I'm a little less willing to defend. But the but when it came to of course I can't talk about Halo 2 without talking about the abrupt ass ending.
No.
Wait, that's twice.
Now I will note I do have to note that the the boss fight with Tartarus kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
This is where you start to see where Bungie kind of had to rush things because it was clear this was not the original plan.
No.
Yeah. Hate
And-
rush jobs.
And also the some of the ports have kind of messed around with the lighting, which I'm not fond of, and although I will admit they got that Blur Studios did a better job with the porting of Halo 2 than they did with Halo 1. Then we got to 3, and there's a few interesting things to note with 3. First off, they expanded their studio to make sure that that didn't happen again. Second off, 3 is the one case that does not have a jack of all trades weapon.
Which is good, in my opinion. Because it didn't have a jack of all trades weapon, you were constantly experimenting with weapon setups to see which suited what situations best.
Also, I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but you know how I've had the running theme of I don't play on the highest difficulty?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
two instances I need to mention. One, I never play the highest difficulty on any good COD game because nade spam for days.
Oh.
2, I'm not going to do that with Halo 2 because fucking snipers.
Oh, yeah. You know that that weapon in freaking in Counter-Strike in which everybody really hates the AWP.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine an entire battalion with AWPs. That's in Halo 2.
Yeah, Jackal snipers, they will. There is no way you can barely see them, and there is no way you're going to predict that they're going to be able to shoot you. And one shot and you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just peek out this because the thing is, you take less damage, and every enemy fires faster than you, and they will start firing quicker.
Yep.
Which is the reason why Halo 2 on Legendary is retard mode.
Halo, I did Halo 2 on Legendary.
Mm-hmm.
It is why I decided not to do a Halo 2 lasso run. Because lasso on Halo 2 would just be... look, there are parts of me that may enjoy a challenge, but at that point you're beyond masochistic and straight into Death Wish.
Yeah. It's like before you play, you basically have you sign a death warrant.
Do you want to live?
Even Xanatrix has his limits.
Mm-hmm.
I have limits of what is known as good taste.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Look, if it goes into Death Wish, who plays Paul Kersey?
Fucking damn it!
Oh, you know what? Hold
God
on.
damn it, Maddie.
Well, I know this. I usually use.
I've been quiet for too damn long, boys. I'm sorry. Nice.
Now, when it comes to of course, when it came to 3, first off, it definitely had a much more coherent story overall. The only thing I didn't care for was the whole sudden heel turn when it came to 343 Guilty Spark, and having him be the final boss is kind of lame. But something else that I have to note is all the voice actors do an amazing job with Halo 3, except for one. and that is the prophet of truth. Because between Halo 2 and 3, he had his voice actor replaced. In 3, he was voiced by Terrence Stamp, who Terrence Stamp is a good voice actor. I want to make that clear.
Kneel before Zod.
But
Neil.
his voice does not fit this character. Now you listen to the Prophet of Truth in 2, and it's very clear why he is considered the head of the prophets. You listen, but in 3, he ends up acting way too cartoonish, especially when it comes to the notion of godhood. And it just doesn't work. So this again, it's a case of a good voice actor with a bad fit can wreck things.
Nothing it's not a problem for it's not him specifically that causes the problem. It's that the role does not suit him.
Yeah.
It goes to a long-standing thing I've always said when it comes to voice actors. 99% of the time, it's not the voice actor that's the problem. It's usually either writing or direction. In this case, it was clearly direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to side note here that Halo 3 is the game where I killed myself playing the game to the point that I stopped playing FPSs for probably 15 years.
Yeah.
I ran a single-player lasso run on Halo 3.
Now of course, when it came to Halo 3's multiplayer, there were good and there were questionable things. The good, of course, was putting in theater mode and introducing the Forge, which has since become a Halo staple. The bad was the fact that Halo's combat loop has revolved around a kind of holy trinity in the fact that guns, grenades, and melee were something that you could always utilize with the press of a button instead of having to cycle between them like in older games.
Yep.
But with Halo 2 onward, they tried to implement a fourth pillar in the form of equipment. And the big problem... I'm not saying that equipment was bad. What I'm saying is I didn't miss equipment when it wasn't around. I'd say the only equipment that I actively used was the bubble shield. Everything else was just a ball of meh.
I sometimes use the jetpack. I found it useful.
Also, Snowbound is the worst map. Like the remaining maps are okay to fine. They're nowhere near as good as the maps in Halo 2. And I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of people did remixes of those old maps. But when it comes to ODST, since Crunch has mentioned that one, what I do find interesting is originally it was meant to be an expansion, not a standalone material.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, that's why ODST gets a lot of hate, because it felt like a damn expansion.
Originally it was known as Halo 3 Recon, and was going to be a standalone expansion, that was going to be available at a reduced price. But the suspicion is that Microsoft looked at it and said, you have a campaign length that's the same as other games, i.e. Modern Warfare. Why not release this as a full-on standalone?
Oh boy, it's the search for more money.
I think that was where the tension really started between Bungie and Microsoft. Plus, a lot of the other Halo products that they were trying to push to expand the IP blew up in their face. The Halo movie didn't happen because Microsoft acted like the big swinging dick. There was supposed to be another series, almost not. There was a MMO project that went nowhere. There was apparently going to be an interactive fiction project that Peter Jackson was going to be involved in, which also went nowhere. And I think that was the reason why Microsoft and Bungie weren't seeing eye to eye as much, because the projects that they were leading ended up being duds or just never materialized. But when it came to ODST, and this is where I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a little bit of flack on some points. ODST has the strengths and weaknesses of Joss Whedon as a writer. Even though Joss Whedon wasn't involved, but you had a lot of ex-Firefly actors involved with the project, including Captain Tight Pants himself.
Captain Tight Pants.
Nathan Fillion.
Oh, that guy. Ugh.
The big problem is, and this is the fact that Nathan Fillion, not Nathan Fillion, but Joss Whedon, when he writes ensemble casts, the big problem is that the personalities of the individual characters start to blend a little bit in like a Venn diagram with each other.
They become a goulash.
Yeah, they all crack wise, but have a veneer of professionalism, that kind of thing, which is something that can work in short bursts. But the problem is he has everybody act that way. And I'd say Firefly is one of the rare cases where this ends up working out, mostly due to the strength of the individual actors. Because I can say that Mal has a much different voice than Book, and Book has a much different voice than Jane, the man they call Jane. But when it comes to ODST, I think its only real failing in its campaign mode is trying to do the notion of allowing you to play episodes out of order when the episodes aren't really designed for it. It's very clear that it should be played in a certain order. I get the idea of trying to do a Metroid-like approach, and they definitely nail the atmosphere when it comes to going through the rainy streets of New Mombasa. But
Yep.
I'd say one of the biggest problems was I don't think it was a good idea to have the rookie be a silent protagonist.
Yeah, that's what we call lazy writing.
I don't think it was a case of laziness. I think this was a case of the scramble. I get the idea. He's the rookie, and you're supposed to put yourself in his shoes. But a lot of times when you end up finding story moments, all that the rookie is actually doing is just picking up an item and then putting it back down.
I feel like they did better with a semi-silent protagonist in Noble 6 on Reach.
Honestly, yes. I'm not saying that the rookie needed to talk all the time, but just to show a bit more perspective would have definitely helped.
Yeah.
The big problem though, and I think this is a consequence of not having enough time to really make it its own thing, is that when it came to how you play with the rookie, you still play a little too much like Master Chief, even if you have weaponry that is more demanding of precision than the very open approach with the Chief.
Back in a bit.
But being able to jump on cars and go toe to toe with hunters is something that you really shouldn't be doing as an ODST member. I mean, ODST members are elite, but there is still a vast gap in difference between them and Spartans.
Yeah, ODST shouldn't be fighting hunters at all unless they have heavy ordnance. They should be running.
Yeah. And I do think that that was the plan with it. It's just when they didn't have enough time to make it a true standalone experience, they weren't able to do that.
Yeah, they just built it off of the Halo 3 engine.
But on the other hand, it did give us Firefight. And while Horde modes were certainly a popular thing around that time, Firefight was a lot of fun in that particular style. And unfortunately, Firefight wasn't as fun in Reach. Which I know is blasphemous to sound like, but that's just... But the problem with it is that let's look at other Horde modes, and you'll kind of see where I'm going with this. Gears of War has slow firing, high damage weapons, and is ultimately aiming for a highly lethal slow pace. A Horde mode in that makes sense because you're going to be pushed against the wall with that approach. Something like COD, you recover quick. You can certainly recover health quickly, but you're going to die very quickly. So it makes sense there. In Reach, with all these super soldier stuff that you can do, the Horde mode doesn't have that pushed up against the wall feeling.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I do very much enjoy the campaign when it comes to Reach, except for one little problem. Reach had a very bigger is better attitude, and hey, Crunch, you actually showed up.
Well, we're talking about Halo, and I think I'm like the only person talking in your chat right now, so I figured I'd come say hi for a bit.
Yeah, a big problem that I had with Halo Reach when it came to a campaign is they had a mindset of put more enemies on the screen.
Yeah, the entire campaign was almost a Horde mode in and of itself.
Also, who here listened to the developer commentary?
I didn't.
I did, and there's one line that stuck with me. They had said that because they were trying to do this thing of integrating the single player and multiplayer experiences. So the idea that they had was to have the single player maps all double as multiplayer maps. In the commentary, they said it was a pain in the butt, and they didn't know if they would do it again, if they were to do the game over again. Which suggests that they realized, as I did, that doing the way you design multiplayer maps and the way you design a single player map are not the same. And trying to have one pull double duty is going to have problems.
Hence why some of the armor ability balance is a little funky.
Okay, I just got back. So you're saying someone tried to put a single player map, the same map as a multiplayer map? That is such a really bad idea.
And Bungie agreed, which is why they didn't do that again.
Well, Reach was also their last one, so
yeah. But since you mentioned the armor abilities, I will touch on that. I realize this is going to be controversial on my part, but I did not care for armor abilities as the fourth pillar attempt there because it ended up having the opposite problem that equipment did. The reason I don't care for armor abilities is because of the fact that they end up rendering certain mechanics pointless. Like what is the point of having an armor and shield setup if you can just use the drop shield?
Yeah, I abused the heck out of that thing when I was doing my Legendary solo run not too long ago. Which, by the way, fuck doing Legendary on solo.
What's the point of What's the point of focusing on positioning when somebody can sprint or use a jetpack?
Yes, you're talking about the same problem that Chris Raygun has with modern Halo games. He thinks the addition of higher mobility options has cheapened the gameplay experience from what it once was.
I don't take it as extreme as Chris Raygun does.
Well, yeah, his is a purist mindset, but I can see his position as well.
I can see it. I just think he goes a little bit extreme. I think
That's kind
that
of shit, though.
I think that instead of like when it comes to sprint, I've never been fond of. There's two problems. One, I'm not a big fan of having two movement speeds like that unless the game is built around it. And two, when you have adding two movement speeds changes so much about the dynamic, like it's a stack of dominoes.
Yep.
Because that's another movement speed that you need to account for. That's why people are the issue with sprint is players are no longer punished as much for bad positioning.
Yep. Which the earlier games, it was if they were badly positioned, you could capitalize it on like nothing else.
The other problem was I'd say this is a bigger problem than sprint, was when you were scoping in the past, if you were scoping and you got hit, you descope. In Reach, you flinch.
Yeah.
I'd say this is a much bigger problem than worrying about mobility, because when that happens, somebody who knows what they're doing, flinching isn't going to mean as much to them because they can just adjust pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And because of that, you can't have reversals.
Yeah, it didn't descope anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and head out. I'm dozing off over here.
All right. Stay frosty, Shades.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, same here, boys. I'm gonna head out, but GoldenEye 007. Talk about it.
Take care, man.
Look, the thing I'll mention about GoldenEye is this. One, the source port is better in every way. Two, fuck the N64 controller when it comes to aiming. Three, anyone who plays as Oddjob, I am within my legal rights to kick you in the balls.
As is anyone, as a matter of fact.
The biggest issue with the rare FPS games, GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, is since they were released on N64, they had an issue with the fact that they did add a Y-axis to aiming. So you had to stand still to aim up or down and shoot. As Monk rightfully pointed out, since the source port is much better since you can aim and move at the same time now.
And also the Perfect Dark also had a Xbox port as well, which is that problem.
And,
Good night, boys.
The Xbox port was superior.
And then Perfect Dark Zero happened, but who cares?
Well, the only thing I'll say on Perfect Dark is ban the laptop gun.
Do you not like me putting up turrets all over the map?
Oh yeah, no, the laptop gun in N64 is evil. The one in Zero is not as bad. It has less range of motion, so
yeah. But when it came to Reach, the other bit, there was one gun that really screwed over multiplayer balancing.
I bet I can make two guesses which one that is.
All right, I'll bite. What's your guesses?
It's either going to be the plasma launcher or the focus rifle, because fuck both of those.
Actually, it's neither of them. It's
really?
It's the DMR.
Huh. Because targeting bloom or
more or less, it's a mixture of targeting bloom and also the fact that it ended up making things way too easy on those wide open maps. On the closed maps, it's not as good, but the wide open maps are going to be the specialty with Halo always. I mean, big team battle has been a staple since day one.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't now when it comes to shooting the DMR, I don't have a problem with it. It's the way it can be applied. That being said, there's a few modes within Reach's multiplayer that sadly I don't think have ever been touched on since.
Which one's that?
Invasion.
Yeah, they haven't done an invasion mode since that one. I think the closest we kind of have to that is maybe Warzone in 5, but it's not quite the same.
No, I don't like Warzone.
Oh yeah, no, I don't touch Warzone at all. The only Warzone I'll play on 5 is like Firefight because it's a weird mishmash.
And when it comes to Halo 4, I enjoyed the emotional range that its story had. The big problem was it was stuck in between generation hell, and the fact that 343 decided to try and assemble a dream team. But the problem with doing that is you end up having a bunch of different cooks who have different design philosophies. Because keep in mind, they brought in people from Zipper Interactive, Slant 6, who worked on both incarnations of SOCOM, Retro Studios, Square Enix, Guerrilla, and a dozen other different disparate studios that had worked on shooters in the past.
So, take this as a lesson out there, devs. When you're trying to build a dream team, make sure that the elements of your dream team create a cohesive whole. Make sure that they are more than the sum of their parts, and they are not the sum of their parts conflicting with each other.
Yeah, this is why people have nicknamed the multiplayer for Halo 4 Call of Halo, because they decided to introduce loadouts.
Yeah,
and
I've spent a good amount of time playing Halo 4 with a buddy of mine.
The armor mods in Halo 4, I get I know what they were trying to do, but some of the unlocks were bizarre. Like why is picking up grenades labeled as a mod? Having that sort of unlock system just doesn't work for a arena style game. And also now of course later on they patched this out, but I did not care for Ordnance. I felt that Ordnance turned firefights into a dice roll.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can see that.
Now if Ordnance was in its own mode, I wouldn't have a problem with it because obviously there's going to be the more focused type of multiplayer matches, and then there's going to be the clusterfucks, we're just doing it for the hell of it kind of modes. But the problem is they put Ordnance in every single mode, and the reason why they did it ostensibly was to give new players a better chance to use power weapons. On paper, that's a noble idea, but in practice, you'd be better off getting that across by putting more spawn points for power weapons in certain modes.
Good on paper, bad in practice. That's a lot of things in life.
This is why a lot of people think that you can just change one thing and instantly have an improvement. Game design is a very tightly wound up watch with all the gears in exactly the right places so that everything works the way it's supposed to.
Yep. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
You mess with that watch even a little bit, and it has consequences that mess up the whole set of gears.
Yeah. The changing of one element is a butterfly effect for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It extends throughout the entire thing and can eventually destroy the entire experience.
Yes.
So when people are like, "Oh, just take X out, I'm always like, well, what is X attached to? Look at the threads, find where they tie, and realize that if you take X out, well, then Y, Z, and A all fail.
Pretty much. Now, when it came to 5, I'm just gonna come out and say it. 5 has the worst campaign in the entire series,
No one's going to argue with that one.
including making some failings that even first year students in fiction writing wouldn't make.
So many things wrong with 5.
Also, 5 was when they start. A lot of the people that worked on 4 at 343 Industries left in between the development, and now bringing in the guy behind Republic Commando to try and do the whole emphasis on team-based approach. A noble idea in concept, but in execution it ended up being pointless, because what you have is a case where it wants to be a team-based shooter, but not really. It wants to be a solo game, but not really.
Yeah, the squad mechanics in Halo 5 are stupid.
Honestly, I only ever used it to just command them to shoot the hunter. Of course, the big problem that I had was the fact that the marketing campaign fucking lied.
Oh yeah, no, that's like the biggest hole and a half of that thing. Is like,
you look at that trailer and there's that whole line of I'm not just hunting a Spartan, I'm hunting the Spartan.
And then that goes absolutely fucking nowhere.
That the whole idea of having Locke chase after Master Chief. That's a fascinating kind of story.
Too bad it goes nowhere.
Yeah, and by the time Locke catches up with Chief, he gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
I mean, how did Locke expect to fight Chief in the first place?
I mean, there's ways to do it, but the fight scene that they went with was so sloppy.
Yeah.
And I know they're in power armor, but they're both Spartans. They should not be fighting in such a sluggish manner.
Are they both Spartan 2s?
No. Chief's a Spartan 2, Locke is a Spartan 4.
Mm-hmm.
Then he automatically loses. Everything past the Spartan 2 series was weaker.
Yeah, the advantage when it came to the later Spartan types was the fact that they were easier to implement.
Yeah, because you didn't have to go through the whole implanting on kids thing.
Yeah, you didn't have to go through the whole completely ripped from 40K thing. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's not beat around the bush there. We all know that the Spartan 2s are Space Marines by any other name. And even then, they're inferior to real Space Marines, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Spartan 2's major advantage, they were durable, they were extremely strong, they were battle trained and tested.
Mm-hmm.
The advantages of the Spartan 3s and 4s, quicker to implement, but that led to weaker enhancements.
Pretty much. The only way to really even it out was to do the enhancements on people who already had a lot of seasoning to them.
Yeah, like Locke.
Mm-hmm.
Or Fox, since he was an ODST.
Yeah, the other... Now, Halo, I'd say the thing about the shooter during the 7th generation and onward is, like I said, this emphasis on set piece design and more focus on a focus on spectacle. There's also the problem of following somebody around, i.e., you're not the hero in the story. Someone else is. You're just another gun on the ride. Some of these did this better than others. Like I said, the first three Gears of War I still enjoy. Especially the first one, which is the first two are my favorite of them. But you had this emphasis on and of course the story mode being an afterthought for the real moneymaker, which was the multiplayer.
Multiplayer was and still is in a lot of cases the primary focus for most shooting games.
Yeah. And of course then that took a turn with the rise of the hero shooter. Now, the patient zero, of course, for hero shooters was Team Fortress 2. I don't think anyone's going to deny that, but
Nope.
there's an interesting difference when you look at Team Fortress 2's attempt with hero shooting and the hero shooting you would see with Overwatch or with Paladins. Paladins is better, by the way.
Both are shit, so it doesn't matter.
Or I was going to bring up Siege, but that's a whole other can of worms. And I do. And it has to do with the fact that that even over the years with TF2, it still maintained an emphasis on just the base classes. What changed was the equipment that you could utilize. So you could turn a mid-ranger, like say the Demo Man, into a close range jackass with a few switches.
Demo Knights are shit. Please stop.
Of course, if you want to be a dick about Demo Knights, you can always use sticky launchers and the Ullapole Caber.
Those are so fun to use.
So you can just ambush and then take someone out in one hit. Yeah,
Yep.
You got to go back and resupply, but the damage is done.
Taking out someone who might be at a choke point or at some sort of strategic area. So yeah, it's good.
When it comes to the reason why I've never really gotten fully in bed with the hero shooter is because of the fact that I could see that it was running on a kind of it's always running on a kind of borrowed time, since the only way to really expand on its sandbox is not through new maps, not through new loadouts, which would be easier to balance, but through adding more characters. And the thing is, when you add more characters, then you have to balance those out against the characters that already exist, and you have a much higher possibility of power creep.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen it pretty steadily with Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Moira first came out and everyone was screaming how busted she was, and she was.
Yes.
And then Doomfist was busted when he came out.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too.
Bridget is a war crime.
What about the hamster? Did everybody forget how the hamster is a crime against humanity and nature?
Of course, the other problem with something like Overwatch, and I remember talking about this a bit when I had Mark Kern on, is there's this weird thing with Overwatch where they want to minimize tech as much as possible in the name of balance. And there's also the fact that when it comes to player expression, they keep you on a short leash. This is the reason why I say I like Paladins more than I like Overwatch when it comes to hero shooters. Both certainly have their problems, but Paladins at least lets me breathe.
Yeah, as I already pointed out, I basically killed my interest in FPSs right around 3 ODST and Reach by doing a lasso run on 3. So things like Overwatch, friends tried to get me into it. Someone even bought me a copy of the PC version. Back when the newest character was Anna, Farrah's mom. Yeah. So back that far, and I played it for maybe a month, and then it was like, I'm bored, and left.
Yeah.
And it's really been that way with FPSs in general for me. So most of my commentary is secondhand.
Yeah. Now, when it comes I'd say one of the as bad as much of a crime against humanity as Hamster can be, I'd actually say he's one of the exceptions because due to needing to utilize the physics engine, you actually have a bigger sandbox with him than you have with other characters. But this is also the reason why I have a soft spot for Siege. Aside from the fact that you have to be a lot more careful with firefights. In fact, you probably want to avoid all-out firefights if you can. But there's the fact that you have to set up you don't have your kit picked out for you in advance. You have to set that up and plan it, and you can't get comfortable with just one character because of course there's the whole attacker defender round setup that Siege has. Unless you're somebody like Caveira, in which case everybody hates you. Mainly because of her having a pistol that does 99 damage solely for her interrogation abilities.
Sheesh.
Which is one it, and of course there's the, but even with Siege, there's still the problem of needing to add more and more characters, or there's also the issue of having characters and maps that end up being temporary. Like those seasonal maps have some really good ideas that I wish they'd keep around for longer. Or like some of those promotional maps, like when they've done the horror themed maps.
Oh yeah, the Rattlesix Dude maps.
Yeah.
I will never ever unassociate one of those spooky house maps with Russian Badger's video on it. Freaking Rattlesix Dude.
Doesn't help that you can't think of that without thinking of the trumpet.
I just watch way too much Russian Badger.
Well, he's definitely an entertaining shit poster.
Hell yes, and I love it.
Just remember, you will doot for the skeleton war. You can be a dootvenant.
How does a skeleton doot with no lips? I just realized.
The same way a revenant doots with no lips.
Yeah, because remember the revenant dooting is canon.
Yep, I have that skin.
One, there's that skin, and two, they hit him in the artwork for Doom 2016.
That's funny.
The Dootenant is a thing.
Yes, but that particular style of being so linear on the matter, we're starting to see that phase out with the revival of old school shooters. It was already slowly building because there was already independent scenes that were making spiritual successors and the like. But things really kicked off, obviously, when Doom 2016 rolled around. Mm-hmm. Which, it's a miracle that thing even came out.
I actually need to finish that game.
First off, there was a Doom 4 that was in the works that was a little too modern, for lack of a better word, and it scrapped it. Partially because of the fact that Rage ended up blowing up in their face and was part of the reason Carmack left.
Yeah. Rage was I'm gonna put it this way: Rage was not a bad game, but it wasn't an excessively good one. Like it was okay, maybe a little higher than mediocre, but not anything great.
Yep.
And then with Rage 2, there's been a lot of just as an aside for Rage 2, there's been a lot of reviews I've seen that I actually agree with, where gunplay in Rage 2 is fantastic because it's the id Software side of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then the open world aspect is lacking because it's Avalanche, the same guys who did, the Mad Max game. And while a bleak and empty open world for a Mad Max game is expected, all things considered, you don't have to extend that to every other open world game you make, Avalanche.
Yeah. I will say Rage 2 is slightly better, mostly because it stopped taking itself seriously.
Oh God, yes. That was definitely a plus in its book. It was no longer this serious story. It was like, oh no, no, this is not serious at all.
Mm-hmm. Then we ended up getting a lot more attempts at using older tech to make new spins on shooters. And this brings us to New Blood, who, one of these days I'll stop sucking New Blood's dick, but they'd have to make a bad game first, and so far it's not happening. Or even
Interactive.
Even publishing a bad game, because they didn't make the Faith games, but look, it's a case of less is more. The Faith games creep me out. Something about using old PC sound effects to make their own Exorcist inspired game, including using old PC voice clips.
I love them though.
Mm-hmm. Of course, our first introduction to New Blood was through Dusk, which I guess the best way to describe Dusk is what would happen if Blood and Quake hate fucked each other. And it ended up, and of course, we ended up with that cameo at the end of Stephen Wade with that line of, "What did you expect at the end of all this? God? The devil, perhaps? No, it's just me."
Yep.
And of course, and although it did have some nice little callbacks, namely the crossbow, which is taken straight from Heretic, even though it doesn't work exactly the same way, because the crossbow in Heretic was your shotgun in all but name.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course we had a Medieval, which I'd say has a lot more in common with Heretic.
Yes.
Up including to the fact that the soul mode that the game has, that's pretty much its version of the Tome of Power. Although I'd say slightly better because using soul mode completely changes how a lot of weapons work. And even unlike a lot of shooters, the base axe that you get is useful throughout the game. Especially although I would also, if someone's playing a Medieval, I would recommend they lean towards the easier difficulties on their first run, because a Medieval can get intense.
Yep. And then of course, something new that New Blood actually helped put out was Unfortunate Spaceman.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like this game
Mm-hmm.
because it takes all the paranoia of Among Us, and now you get to shoot the bastard who's trying to kill you. Fuck you, imposter! Take a railgun to the face.
Pretty much. Now when it comes to So when it comes to some of the more recent stuff, there are two games that they are publishing that I am very hyped for. One of them, which I've played through the early access version a bit, is Ultra Kill, which they have nicknamed Devil May Quake.
Oh, New Blood.
Yeah, they seem to like giving themselves meme website addresses that'll redirect to their stuff. Like they started out with one called We Hate Money.
Yep.
I
think that's still up too.
Yep. Now, Ultra Kill, of course, I've talked about it a handful of times on the Monastery, but it's definitely trying to go for that old PS1 era graphic design. The thing that I find interesting about it is this is a shooter that demands that you get up close because you're fueled by blood. Blood is fuel, hell is full, mankind is dead.
Yep. I've actually played that one, but
the only reliable way to get health back is to get blood splatters.
Yep.
Also it has a style meter.
Yes.
And already the crazy Twitter account has shown some people doing clips, and people are already finding new and interesting ways to fuck with the game.
Reminds me of when Vanquish first dropped.
There's definitely is a Vanquish vibe, especially with all the mobility options that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find it funny that Vanquish's chief inspiration was Kashan. To the point that you were originally supposed to have a dog companion that could act as a mobile shield.
Yeah, I kind of wish they had still gone with that. I would have loved to be playing Kashan Robot Hunter and all but name.
Yeah. But when it comes to the other product that they've been developing, which is Gloomwood, it's basically a better version of Thief. And I know some people might cry foul at me saying that because Thief is this pinnacle of stealth games. Although let's be clear, Thief 1 is not the pinnacle. Thief 2 is.
Thief 2 is, and it's dated, unfortunately. Like, I can go and play Thief 2, and I can very definitely appreciate everything it's done and how good it is for the product of its time.
Yeah.
However, if I try to compare it to entries in the same type of genre it espouses to be in modern day, thank you, Thief 2. You gave them the tools. They ran with them.
Yeah.
Now the master is exceeded by their apprentices.
Which is how this kind of thing always works.
And it's also how it should be.
Now, Gloomwood is very. First off, the map that was in the demo was fucking huge.
Yes, it was. That was a very big map.
The big advantage that it has over Thief, it has melee options that aren't shit.
Wait, you mean you're supposed to have melee options in a stealth game? Who knew?
Look, I know that in Thief you're not supposed to be going toe to toe with enemies, but you can at least make melee combat that isn't trash. And let me make clear on one thing: anybody who says you cannot make melee combat in first person, go give yourself a swirly, because you clearly don't have room to hang with the big boys.
So, anyone who says you can't make good melee combat in first person, you need to play. Oh, there's any number of games, but let's take a game in the same vein as Thief or these other stealth games. Let's go with Dishonored.
Dishonored is one. Let's also go with Breakdown. Let's go with Mach X. And let's go with Shadow Warrior.
Yep.
Or
Shadow Warrior has some fantastic melee.
yeah. And let's go with Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Oh man, the melee's so hard in that game.
It's hard, but it's rewarding to get good at it.
Oh yes, it is. It's definitely rewarding to get good, but holy god damn. Did you guys have to make it that accurate? Thank you, Warhorse Studios. I love you.
Barbara, I love you, but you can be a dick.
He never said he wasn't. He never claimed otherwise.
Which is definitely true. But of course, the reason why it's doing that is purposeful, because it's trying to beat in your head that playing aggressive is not the way to go with that game.
Yeah, you're meant to be playing the game. I mean, you can go full aggressive through that game. There's plenty of runs that have done it. It's trying to encourage you not just to go with violence. Like, it's possible to do it if you learn the systems and you run through it. But there's other stuff you can experiment with, and that's what it's actually encouraging. It's not saying no, violence bad, do other stuff. It's saying violence hard. Maybe there are other ways.
Yep. And the point with those is that there is a way to do it, and this is also the reason why a lot of people have treated the Elder Scrolls as a punching bag because of all the Skyrim memes. Get on my level, because the Elder Scrolls has been my punching bag since Daggerfall.
No, Daggerfall was fantastic.
Oh, Daggerfall was fantastic, but that was where the problems started to show because of the fact that they were putting too much emphasis on having a big procedurally generated world. The problem is when trying to do that kind of thing, you have large swaths of nothing going on.
Yep. That's the same with Vardenfell and Morrowind. I'm going to put it this way, though. Morrowind is probably the last Elder Scrolls game that had anything interesting in it. I cannot for the life of me think of a single interesting story beat for Oblivion. Like, I know the story because, played the game. But there were never any side quests that captured me, like some of the side quests for Morrowind. Or, just the interactions with Vivek in Morrowind are a joy compared to anything in Oblivion. And then, Skyrim is... Oh, Skyrim. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And of course, the big reason why the Elder Scrolls is my punching bag is for their shitty melee combat. And just shitty combat system, period.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
But now, of course, although New Blood is certainly one of the flag bearers, they're not the only ones, because Voidpoint, of course, has been kicking ass. You probably saw what they did with Ion Maiden and how it's amazing that they managed to get Eduk to work that well. With all the stuff that they did with that. If I was playing Ion Maiden in with my old PC, it would have burst into flames.
Yep.
The only problem that I had with Ion Maiden is that maybe they did a little bit too good of a job at hiding some secrets.
Yeah, and then of course there's the fact that they had to rename Ion Maiden. I didn't like that.
To be honest, I didn't like that they had to do it, but I understand why they did it, because
but it doesn't even make sense. Iron Maiden didn't need to sue Voidpoint for that. Nobody was going to confuse a video game called Ion Maiden for the band Iron Maiden. That's not going to happen.
The argument that they tried to use in the suit was that putting out one Iron Maiden mobile game meant that they were also involved in game development.
Retarded.
I swear to God, that was the case. That was what they tried to use that as their evidence that that their brand is in gaming as well. And yet it was dumb, and they probably would have won a lawsuit, but a lawsuit would have taken time.
Well, they would have won a lawsuit only because they probably have better lawyers. I mean, it's Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
But they've been around for such a long time, they probably have an army of lawyers.
Well, that and Iron Maiden and Metallica are the two most notorious litigators in metal.
They're very litigious. Except recently, Metallica's been kind of stepping back from that, especially with their experiences with their album Death Magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, piracy and things like that actually helped get us more sales in the end. And their litigiousness has been curbed. Iron Maiden, not so much. So just to the Maiden members out there, Steve Harris, stop being a jackass.
Yeah. But the other thing that Voidpoint did that I think is really impressive is their port of Doom 64.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Which actually manages to make it better than the version that I was using for the longest time, which was Doom 64 EX.
Yeah.
Which was just Doom 64 on GZ Doom.
Yeah, it was Doom 64. It was Doom 64 in the source engine, essentially. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there probably was similar software with this one, but it plays a lot better, and you've got a whole other chapter to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And 3D Realms has been they're not putting out new games per se, but what they are doing is being a very effective publisher for people who want to make throwback games. One of the ones that I'm really looking forward to that very much does feel like a spiritual successor to the original Quake is Wrath: Aeon of Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
The part of the reason I say that I'd say it's a good amount of Quake with a little bit of Heretic. One, because you're dealing with very gothic areas, and two, you have an emphasis on a hub, but also a heavy emphasis on atmosphere, which was the biggest strength that Quake's single player campaign had, as we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, and of course there's been plenty of others, to the point where boomer shooter is now being used as a pejorative,
which is stupid considering using boomer as a pejorative for people that frankly are not is stupid on the person saying it, and B, what's so bad about an older shooter if the older shooter is better than what modernity is offering?
The last modern style shooter that I bought was Titanfall 2.
I am trying to think of the last modern style shooter I purchased.
And the thing about Titanfall 2 is, I will freely admit, the main reason I got it is the idea of doing both shooting in and out of mechs.
Yeah, mecha is always going to be, the best.
Yeah, and of course. Now, of course, there's been some other entries that are definitely interesting. City of Brass was a nice little roguelike spin on things. The one shooter that I hope I never see a remake or successor or the like is MDK. Which the official reading of it is supposed to be Mission Deliver Kindness, but I think we all know what it was actually supposed to be.
Yeah, a 187. Or
And
Demolition Man
yeah,
reference.
yeah, murder, death, kill.
So the last first-person shooter I purchased looks to have been Immortal Redneck.
Well, that's saying something.
Game.
Yeah, I did. Now when it came, now, I did. After the success of Doom 2016, I thought I'd have a good amount of time with Quake Champions. I didn't. And the big reason why I didn't is because Quake Champions tried to do two things that don't mix, because this works so well with Lawbreakers.
Oh God.
They tried to do an arena shooter and a hero shooter at the same time.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
No.
Creating arenas for people who all have different abilities is you either get curb stomped because you have a combination of abilities that dominates the battlefield, or you don't, or you stalemate because you both have the same exact heroes.
I know some people might argue, but didn't you buy Bright Memory? Doesn't that count as a modern shooter? No.
Bright Memory is an action game, people, not a shooter.
An action game made mostly by one guy.
In a different language.
Which is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have to slightly correct myself, because I did buy both of the Darkness games. Darkness 1 and 2.
Yeah, but the Darkness games are older anyway, and they're still pretty good.
Yeah. I did recently grab Hell Let Loose, which to me feels like fills the void that the Battlefield series kind of didn't, in the sense of giving me a decent World War I or World War II sim.
Yeah. I mean, I think the era of I'm going to be honest. I think the era of the World War I or World War II sim has kind of passed at this point.
World War II, definitely. World War I can't really say there was an era, because that was not a game that was not an era that was touched on very often with games.
Yes, but that entire time period of trench warfare, the advent of machine guns, etc., which is World War I, and World War II, especially. I feel like that style of warfare, that whole style, had its time in the sun and wasn't something that had staying power.
Yeah, I don't think that when it comes to the current trend of trying to do old school, I see that as having a bit more staying power than some people would like to think, simply because, for one, since they're using refined versions of old tech, it's going to be easier to manage.
Yeah.
Like, with a lot of it started out as mods of older engines, or refined versions of older engines. Like I said, anybody who when it came to Ion Maiden, that's using, I think they say it's using a modified version of the build engine, but in reality, it's using Eduke.
Okay.
Like, and you know how GZ Doom is the best way to play Doom?
Yep.
The same kind of goes with Eduke when it comes to Duke Nukem 3D. Like, nobody I know plays the World Tour version. Mostly because they don't want to give Randy Pitchford money, which is completely understandable.
Wait, we're only good things, Monk. No Randy Pitchford.
When it comes, there was, of course, when it comes to mods, one thing that I feel I do need to mention is SPV3.
Okay.
Which,
Okay.
Are you familiar with this?
Vaguely, I've heard it before. Isn't it a mod for Halo Combat Evolved?
It's specifically custom edition. The PC version that was developed by Gearbox.
Mm-hmm.
And of course had the source code.
Yeah.
The important thing with custom edition is that it allowed people to really do some interesting things with Halo. And with SPV3, what you end up it ends up adding a lot of features. Some from older material, some from newer material. Does a significant redesign on a good amount of the art, and basically feels like the most enhanced of enhanced remakes of Halo.
Yeah.
Including bringing in weapons from more recent games. Instead, it does mean that some of the tight focus that was in the original is kind of lost because there's a lot more crazy going on. But on the other hand, there's a lot of crazy going on.
Yeah.
But but I think if there's one takeaway to be made is that if somebody is looking at shooters and just going with the dude bro COD assumption, they're really missing out on a lot of quality, especially these days. Like something that I have repeatedly said, and I'm going to keep saying until my voice gives out, is that there is too much good stuff out there to be excessively negative about a genre within gaming or gaming as a whole.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And with how easy it is to look this kind of stuff up, there's even less excuse. Because back in the day, I would be willing to accept an excuse a little bit because it was hard to look things up. Not so much these days.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Looking stuff up's real easy.
Yep. But with that coda out of the way, that is going to do it for this particular episode of not the monastery, but Geekwatch. We'll be back. We'll be back here with a brand new topic next week. That all I can promise is that it will not be video game related, because I don't want to double dip back to back.
True that.
And of course, I do have a slew of interviews lined up, and a couple days where I've got 3 days where I'm doing double duty. So here's what's going down. Tomorrow, Tiago Junges will be on the show finally, assuming that we don't have another communication breakdown. On Tuesday, Sam Wisa, the guy responsible for Void Empires 2750, will be on the show. Wednesday, I will have Animal Studios, the people responsible for the upcoming The Way of Wrath PC-style RPG, as well as John Yackel, who's creating the Fading Embers campaign setting. Thursday, I will have Open-Ended Games, the creators of Against the Dark Master, and Philip T. Adams, the creator of the Adventure System. Friday, I will have Nicolo Zovetti, the creator of Ex Lumine, and Brad Decker of FASA, who's currently working on 1879. And Saturday, before the Gazette, I will have Ed Jowett on the show. I've had him on in the past, but he He's the guy behind Shades of Vengeance. So those are a few things to look forward to this week, and of course, I am finishing up the review of Project Biomotus. There's just a couple things that got messed up that I have to re-record, but I will have that as soon as I can, and that won't be the only review this month. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join